right, we got another interesting piece here for you about lab leak and how the consensus has moved incredibly dramatically. It's another CNN tear sheet.
Yeah.
Let's throw this up there on the screen. So apparently,
according to CNN,
so take it with a grain of salt. Senior Biden officials are finding the COVID lab leak theory is just as credible as the natural origins explanation. And of course, why is this notable? Well, because for so long, we were told that you had to be crazy, racist, xenophobic, etc., to even posit that it was possible that the lab leak theory could be true, or say, hey, maybe we should look into that. Maybe this is a path that it's worth exploration. And the reality is, we still don't know whether it's natural origin or lab leak. We might have had a better chance of actually finding that out if there had been an aggressive push from the media from the jump, looking just at the facts and the science and what we knew and what we didn't know and pushing the Chinese government for more information and all of that from the beginning. But we are where we are. But it's just remarkable turnabout that now even the Biden administration is saying it's kind of a 50-50 chance either way. Part of the report here says current intelligence reinforces the belief that the virus most likely originated naturally from animal-human contact and was not deliberately engineered. But that does not preclude the possibility the virus was the result of an accidental leak from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where coronavirus was being conducted on bats, although many scientists familiar with the research say such a leak is unlikely. So they're still putting a lot of caveats in there. But basically, the bottom line is now they really feel like it's 50-50. It could go either way.
No, they do. And there's a lot also in here, which is that on Thursday, which the Director General of the WHO, Tedros, I can't say his last name, we all remember him from the early months when he was spouting China's lies. He now says it was, quote, premature to dismiss the possibility of the lab leak. So even the guy bought by China says that it was premature. That's where things stand. But don't worry, our fearless Dr. Fauci is still out there defending the natural origin theory. Let's take a listen to what he said, I think just yesterday.
CNN has learned that some senior Biden officials think that the lab leak theory, which has been talked about for a while now, is at least as credible as the natural origins explanation. Has your thinking on this changed at all? Does that align with your thinking on this?
I keep an open mind and say that we should consider all possibilities until we definitively prove one. But I, together with many highly qualified vaccinologists, and virologists, including a recent paper by 21 internationally renowned virologists and evolutionary biologists from all over the world, indicate that although we keep an open mind, that it is possible that it could be, as they say, a lab leak, that the most likely explanation is a natural evolution from an animal reservoir to a human.
Now, look, he's actually lying there. He hasn't kept an open mind, which is that more than a year ago, May of 2020, National Geographic, he explicitly told them, quote, no scientific evidence the coronavirus was made in a Chinese lab. Absolutely unequivocal terms. Fauci emails, many of you already know the story. He was aware in January that the virus was, quote, not consistent with evolutionary theory. All of this comes down to that if you want to look at the facts are that the lab leak theory both is, just as possible as the natural origin theory, and frankly, has a hell of a lot more circumstantial evidence. Is it true one way or the other? I have no idea, and neither does anybody else. But we should probably still investigate. And yet, Fauci has a lot to lose, which is that the lab leak theory, if it's true, it specifically indicts him. He's the one who went around existing U.S. policy, greenlit dollars to the EcoHealth Alliance, who gave it to the Wuhan lab. And the more we learn about this lab, from Sky News Australia and more, about how they had monkeys in the lab, even though they lied about not having monkeys in the lab. They were apparently begging for help in terms of developing safety procedures. They had admitted on the record that they had no experience in BSL-4 laboratories, which is the highest level of security. This is a total mess that we were 100% complicit in funding. And the person who greenlit that funding is Dr. Fauci. And so I think the worst fear, though, is coming true, Krystal. It's July. It's been months now that the lab leak theory was even considered fine to discuss out in the open. Yeah. Joe Biden gave the administration 90 days. I think it's a delay tactic. Even if they do conclude, it's going to be one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to do anything about it, which is that, look, the WHO, they can't do anything. They're bought and paid for by the Chinese. Only the United States, given the fact that we literally fund this lab, will have to pretty much put some measures, sanctions, whatever, I don't know, on China in order to try and force some sort of cooperation. Will that actually happen? Probably not. But the White House is cowering, and I think in fear, and not actually doing anything real by leaking this stuff anonymously and by not doing any real enforcement against the Chinese government or even Dr. Fauci. I mean, if Fauci greenlit those funds and covered it up, he should be fired. It's obvious to anybody who's involved.
To me, the big thing is, are we going to continue to push forward with gain-of-function research and funding this in large dollar amounts and not asking any questions about whether this is really safe or not, or whether this is going to be, we're like funding the next pandemic. We always say on this, whether it's the military-industrial complex, whether it's, cable news, like, whoever you're listening to, you have to consider what their interests are involved. Mm-hmm. And even if they're not like nefarious actors trying to lie directly to you, people are very easily influenced and very easily swayed by whatever their personal or career or monetary interests happen to be. We have a situation with this research and with this pandemic that if the COVID lab leak theory turns out to be true, it means that the scientific community themselves created this pandemic. There are a lot of people who do not want that to be true.
Yes.
And even if they aren't like directly, like with knowledge, intentionally lying to you, they have a mental incentive to try to find the evidence that supports the idea that this wasn't our fault. We didn't help fund this research. We didn't push this research. This wasn't part of the purview of what we were doing. So it's just really, really important, whether you're a journalist or a consumer of journalism, trying to understand and sort fact from fiction, you have to keep in the back of your mind, what are people's incentives? What are the implications if this theory turns out to be true? And for Dr. Fauci in particular, not only is it like a broad indictment of science created the pandemic, but it's also an indictment of some of the exact type of research that he was involved in helping to fund. So it's a direct, and also it's an indictment at this point of some of the early statements that he made that were very, very dismissive of the lab leak theory. I also thought this was interesting, going back to the CNN article, the way that they framed the, hesitation or the outright ban on talking about the lab leak theory. The way they phrased it was, for the better part of 2020, advocates for the lab leak theory had to fight against claims they were being xenophobic or racist, in part thanks to anti-Chinese rhetoric from then President Trump, who embraced the theory. Now, that is true. Part of what made this very difficult to talk about in a straightforward, political hot topic type of a way was Trump and his irresponsible rhetoric. And he always takes these things and he goes way too far with them and sort of insinuates that this may have been an intentional bioweapon. None of that is true. But it completely lets them off the hook.
Yes.
For just turning their brains off and being like, well, Trump is saying this, X, so Y must be true. That's an indictment of you. You're supposed to be trained to look past those sorts of things and be able to just get at what's possible, what's not possible, what's in the realm of likelihood, what's not, what should we be able to discuss and not. And so none of that self-reflection is there. It's still all excuse making about, well, it was understandable that we called you racist when you said maybe we should look into this lab leak theory thing.
No, what they're giving away the whole game. They're basically being like, Trump was bad, so we didn't believe it. I'm like, okay, so you didn't like the president, so you just decided to let go of all your standards and not do your job? That's not an excuse.
It's very revealing.
It is extraordinarily revealing, I think, on this entire story. And look, we'll continue to keep you guys updated. Like we said, they're halfway through the 90-day intelligence review. My personal thinking is that nothing of consequence is going to come through because, by the way, if it did turn out to be 100% true and the intelligence community had the intel all the way back a year ago, Where's it been, folks? A lot of people have too much to lose if this thing does turn out to be true. Now they're going to try and bury it, and we shouldn't let them, and we're going to continue to stay on top of that.
There you go. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.